I remember when I was young, sitting at the dining room table, drawing horses. I can't stop incorporating them. And I want to explore non-objective art. It allows you to work with just the basics of shape and line, color and repetition, just letting anything develop. Then when I do go back to putting in subject matter, rather than intentionally making the next mark, you respond to the last mark that you made. My repetition of horses has been to feel so comfortable with the form that I can just react to the last mark that I made. It's a practice in lifestyle and the way we treat people, but that's what I value. The community is.
Welcome to Angel City Culture Quest, where art, social justice, and the environment meet in Los Angeles. I am your host, Melina Paris, and I welcome you to this episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Angel City Culture Quest. I'm so pleased that we are speaking today with artist Peggy Sivert as we discuss her wisdom and art, nature, horses, and the value of authentic exploration and experimentation. Hi, Peggy. I'm so glad to have you here.
Hi, Melina. Glad to be here.
I'm going to read a little bit about Peggy's background, and then we're going to get started. Peggy Sivert was born in Los Angeles and grew up in Palos Verdes Peninsula. She received a BA in art education from CSU Long Beach and an MA in humanities from CSU Dominguez Hills. She served as a Peace Corps volunteer for 2 years in Belize, Central America, worked as a high school art teacher in Manhattan Beach, California, and is founder of Sola Contemporary in South Los Angeles. Peggy's art is generated out of the site of her home at Portuguese Bend in Rancho Palos Verdes in California, where she has resided since 1996. Her practice has incorporated sculpture, mixed media, drawing, painting, and assemblage across figuration and abstraction. Peggy's body of work utilizes equestrian and architectural motifs as embodiments of memory and lived experience. Peggy has had regular exhibits at art galleries throughout Los Angeles and internationally in South Korea, Thailand, and Japan. She has been founder, curator, and director for several nonprofit art galleries in Los Angeles. In her artist statement, Peggy addresses the land movement upheaval where she lives. Her home is adjacent to a nature preserve that is part of an ancient landslide. Overlooking the Pacific Ocean, it is a haven for nature and wildlife and a crisis of broken land. Her work often explores the dichotomy between the broken and the flourishing. The breakdown is where she feels compelled to begin and explore. The horse is a symbol that recurs in her mixed media work, not only a recognizable form, but also a metaphor of lived experience, history, and a conduit of memory. Peggy's work shows the value of authentic exploration and experimentation. Modern artists Susan Rothenberg and Alberto Giacometti have inspired her art aesthetic, and artist Ben Zask is her best critic and provides unwavering support. So, Peggy, on the subject of horses, let's discuss the upcoming invitational exhibition that you will be in June.
Okay, that's a good place to start. It's kind of starting at the present. I'm working on an installation that is a summation of all the years I've been creating horses. And that's probably about at least 30 years. And I was invited to be in a show by Nina Zach Ladden, who is a curator who's been doing these annual shows called California 101 in Redondo Beach. And this year she changed it and she has a new gallery called Gallery 90277/78. which is the zip code of Redondo Beach. And it's called Reimagined Poetic Invitational. So she invited the artists to come up with a poem that either they write or they love, could be any kind of poem from anywhere, to reimagine and to incorporate into an artwork or a body of art. And she also expressed that it needed to be a new work. not just find a work that looks like a poem, but
Yeah.
find a poem and make a work. So that'll be in June. She's always put on really interesting shows because she puts them into unexpected empty buildings, such as the power plant or Gold's Gym, the whole gym she took over one year. So this year it's the Redondo Beach Pier, up above the Redondo Beach Pier. Coincidentally, I picked a poem called The Horses. And I found this poem in all my research on horses over the years and years and years that I've been interested in horses. And when I read it, it just stayed with me and it felt like the way it feels to be alive today. And so I thought this poem by Edwin Muir would be perfect. So Muir was alive before the Industrial Revolution and he grew up on a farm in Scotland. And his childhood was on that farm with his family. And I don't know what it would have been like then, but living in a rural kind of farming being like at least 90% of everyone's living before the industrial age. And the changes that went through it must be similar to our going through AI and the digital age. But anyway, his father lost his farm and his family had to move to the big urban city. And this change, I guess he was very sensitive, being an artist and a poet, really changed him and impacted his sensitivities. So most of his poetry is around the change from nature to industrialization and the breakdown of nature that happens. So this poem, The Horses, was written in the 50s. And the first 5 lines describe the end of the war landscape. Everything was quiet. Everyone went silent. And then the strange horses came. And then it goes on to describe a post-apocalyptic scene where the radio is out, there was no communication, everything went dead. The horses that had been traded for tractors and industrializations came back. And the people didn't recognize them. They saw them as strange. But then when they came, life started over. And that's the way the poem ends. It says, "They're coming, our beginning."
Yeah, that's
And
beautiful.
yeah, it's a dark poem, and we don't really know what happened after the horses came. It's funny that this poem was written in 1956, which is the exact same year that the Portuguese Bend landslide started the land movement, or it was triggered again, an ancient landslide triggered by trying to put in a road into the canyons that are supposed to be draining the water down to the ocean. They decided to put a big highway. And it started this landslide and it hasn't stopped. And then all the rains came in the last few years and made it worse. And now we're living with kind of the results of climate crisis. So that's part of my apocalyptic experience here personally in Portuguese Bend on the coast of Los Angeles.
You went on a hike, you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. After I decided I was going to work with this poem, I went on a hike and I came upon this broken foundation that had been from the 50s, where a house was destroyed by the land movement in my neighborhood. And what was left was just a broken foundation, broken cement slab, big, the size of a house. And you can walk on it and you feel like, oh, this is where the kitchen would have been. And it probably is continuing to shift. It's very slow. So it's not like you're feeling anything moving. It's just you get up one day and you think, oh, that rock is going downhill now. And that's because the land just shifted a little bit, but it does it slowly. So you don't notice it until you focus in on something that you were familiar with. So I got up to that slab and then I realized I was in the back of someone's property that had horses. And there's a little girl has a pony there. And her father came over and I told him what I was experiencing. And I thought, oh, this would be a beautiful place to make a video, something that I'd been wanting to do. And so I decided to make a video as part of my installation and get the horses. We live in a horse community here. and bring the horses in as part of the poem where they come in to a war-torn land.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels like there's been so much damage. There's slabs of broken cement and infrastructure like pipes and steel laying around, and people's houses, some of them are broken in half. And it just feels like war is happening between man and nature. So that was inspiring to want to then continue on with a video. And so I talked to some of my neighbors who have Mustangs that have been rescued from the BLM, and they all have the tattoos on their necks. And
What is the BLM?
oh, the Bureau of Land Management.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know where they actually came from, but I think they're up in those places where they run free and then they get too many of them. So they round them up and auction them off. So we have, well, 3 that I got connected with. So we did our first shoot on Thursday, just a few days ago. I used to have horses when I was young and I grew up with them, but I haven't been handling them since I've been an adult living here for the last 30, 40 years. And they gave me access to bring the horses in for the video shoot. And so I handling these big Mustangs, the real thing. When you get back next to them, especially when you're not riding, when you're just walking with them next to them and you see the world through their eyes, they're looking at everything, they're always aware of everything around them. And they're prey animals. They're vegetarians. They always have to be watching out for something that's going to come get them. So it's been an amazing experience to handle those horses and bring them into the landscape, whether it be the broken infrastructure or the beautiful views over the coast.
Did the shoot go nicely?
Yeah, and we invited Ken Maltonado, who's a cinematographer, is young. Lives next door.
Oh,
And he's also making another video about Portuguese Bend. So he's going to incorporate the horses for me into my video. Then he's also making another one. But we took him to some places that he'd never been before, and he couldn't believe how beautiful it was. Way up high on the top of the hill, and he just had this panorama.
perfect.
Yeah.
So you mentioned from a young child, horses became a big part of your life, and you called them your companions,
Mm-hmm.
which continues to today. So can you describe your connection to the horses? And also, when did you start to include the horses in your art?
Well, I grew up with horses since I was 7 years old, from Gardena to Rolling Hills Estates, and I was in heaven. I couldn't believe it. So much land around me and wildlife and everything. So I took care of these horses. We had them in my backyard in the barn, and every day I fed them, I cleaned them, I rode them, I showed them. And then my mom, not too long after I moved in there and got the horses, she started a little store that was pretty close to our house, but she was still gone when I got home from school. So those horses became my life. I didn't have anyone to answer to when I got home from school. I just went straight out to the barn. I think I was telling you, Melina, before that I was really into chorus in school.
Mhm.
We had a great teacher, Mrs. Lorenz, and she taught us all the show tunes. So they were really fun to sing. So I would practice my show tunes to the horses. I don't know if anybody was listening, but
The
they were good.
universal language, music.
Yeah, I think they liked it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but I also had friends I would ride with, and that was just my complete social life. And I would draw them all the time. When I wasn't out there, I had to come in when it got dark.
Mhm.
I remember just sitting at the dining room table, waiting for dinner, drawing horses, because that's what I saw all the time, and they're fascinating to look at. So I feel like sometimes my paintings and my sculptures probably still look like those early ones that I was doing. I don't know. It's kind of like your first impression, and you try to evolve from that, but you always get back to where you started.
Yeah, it remains. But even in college, you were still doing them.
Yeah, I majored in art, and I found out that people were still doing representational painting. We did have to learn how to draw, but horses were never completely supported. That was for adolescents or something. And also they were teaching minimalism when I was in college at Cal State Long Beach, and that didn't include figurative. But I did, of course, got into sculpture and all types of non-objective art. And I still do it today. I will do figurative painting, and it's not like photorealism. I'm not like an anatomy expert or anything. I understand what I connect with of the horse and its muscles and its movements. And I think people that have horses and know horses usually relate to my work. If you're looking for a anatomically perfect illustration, you wouldn't probably want to look at my work.
I just want to know that your representation is beautiful. Your paintings of horses, as I was looking through your website and other sites online, looking at your horses made my heart feel good. And I don't recall ever having a feeling or a reaction like that before.
Thank you. That makes me feel good too.
No. You spoke about horses as a symbol for returning to nature. Can you describe what you meant by that?
Yes. Well, in the poem, that's what they symbolize. And for me, I think the way I grew up and the way I'm living now, I always kind of seek out these rural places, even though they're very close to Los Angeles City. And in these kinds of places is where you find horses because they require space and space to ride them in, space to let them graze and all that kind of thing. And so horses in nature, they're like a large animal. They're not wild, they're domesticated, but you can't keep them in an apartment. And so some of us would like to, but
It would need to be very big.
yeah.
You mentioned they were in cave paintings even.
Yeah. Back when we study art history, the first image that we see most of the time is the Paleolithic cave paintings in France representing 30,000 BC. I don't think the horses were domesticated at that time, and I think they were seen as probably a food source because a lot of times they're seen kind of more like a hunting scene. But then about 3500 BC, they think they became domesticated in China, Russia, and Kazakhstan is one that is mentioned as the first domesticated horse. I thought that was interesting that that small country is recognized for such an important achievement. And then it goes on to horses have always been a spiritual representation, mythological, magic, because of their strength and as a vehicle for mankind, whether it's in the heavens or actual physically. So they bring up creative kind of imagination. So the horses in history have helped shape our civilization. Before industrialization, that's all we had. And these animals were peaceful, easy to domesticate, and they were harnessed for their speed and force and strength. And these peaceful vegetarians, they were made into war machines, basically, mass transportation. So then in the 1900s, industrialization brought a radical transformation from pastoral, rural farming, and the rapid industrialization brought loss of the rural world, which is nature. Today, we're in a digital age, and it seems like history is repeating, except it feels like humans are being displaced now a little bit. I don't want to be, like, oh.
It's true. Everything you're saying is all connected. Like you said, now it's humans, and humans are being displaced. And we know about it. We hear about it every day. But it makes a good point of observing what's been happening through history.
Right. Yeah, history always helps us put things into perspective. But in answer to the question about returning to nature, the horses were here 30,000 years ago and helped build our world, really. And today, they're being relegated to status symbols and entertainment. So seeing them in their natural setting gives us a glimpse and represents what we've lost and what's happening to us as humans. I don't know about everybody else, but for me, I feel like all I want to do is grasp at nature and hold on to it and protect it. I equate these horses with the natural world because they kind of are like a bridge between man and nature. They're still a little bit wild. They still are a little bit scary to handle. You have to always be careful
Mhm.
and respect them. They're
Yeah.
big, but they also have served us so much.
And you said that your daughters also have grown to appreciate nature.
Yeah. So my daughters grew up here in Portuguese Bend. And even though Ben and I are here enduring this land movement that's expanding to other places that haven't had it before, and dealing with having to go off grid and get propane for our gas and solar for our electricity. It's been a big change. But our daughters grew up and it was kind of idealistic and it was beautiful and we didn't have any real movement or problems.
The community there is also close to nature. You were talking
Yeah.
about that too.
Yeah, the whole community here in Portuguese Bend. And that really has influenced me too, because everyone here is here because they really want to be here and they want to be surrounded by open space and the coyotes and the rabbits and the squirrels and the peacocks even.
There's a lot of wildlife.
Yeah,
for
there's a
sure.
lot of wildlife, and the coyotes you have to be careful of, and you don't want them coming and eating your cat. So it's not all good, but that's the way nature is. It's good and bad, and there's things get killed and things are born. And you learn a lot by observing it.
Time is valuable and good. Please don't direct me to the fact. I'm giving you a minute or else I'll turn my back.
If you're just tuning in, today we're speaking with artist Peggy Sivert on wisdom, art, nature, horses, and the value of authentic exploration and experimentation. Thank you for listening.
Time is valuable and good. Please don't direct me to the fact. I'm giving you a minute or else I'll turn my back.
Hello, folks. This is your host, Melina Paris. As Angel City Culture Quest begins its 4th year, we are dedicated to bringing you quest-worthy inspiration. With so much to cover in the Harbor region and Los Angeles in art, books, film, music, activism, and more. It's a challenge that I'm honored to embrace, discovering and bringing you the inspired stories and works of many different artists. A major highlight of 2024 was to present our video episode in front of a live audience, Consciousness Through the Lens of Abstraction, featuring esteemed artists Marie Thibault and June Edmonds. You can find that on our YouTube. That was a huge push, and we did it with the help of your support. I'm so grateful. Exciting developments are happening. Stay informed by liking, subscribing, and following our updates featuring more great artists and authors, the latest in important documentaries, filmmaking, and more. And if you're able, please join me in this quest with your support. Think of it as a cultural tip jar. I would be honored to have your support to further my ability to bring you the powerful works of these artists and others and the cultural content that you crave. To donate, please go to patreon.com/Angel City Culture Quest. There you can find all of our past episodes. Thank you.
Time is valuable and good. Please don't direct me to the fact. I'm giving you a minute or else I'll turn my back.
I just want to mention those 3 pieces of note. All your work is really astounding and beautiful. And 3 that happened to stick out to me earlier this week. There's Light Traffic, which is made from tires and found metal, acrylic, and chalk on wood panel. That's a striking piece.
Thank you.
Then you have the 4 horses,
Mm-hmm.
oil on canvas. And then you have a collage called Yesterday, Tomorrow, and that's a mixed media.
Mm-hmm.
Backing up to the first one, on Light Traffic, what inspired that particular piece?
That was a trip to Palm Springs and Joshua Tree. And we were driving on the 10 highway from Palm Springs to Joshua Tree. And light traffic is an understatement. There was no traffic, really, because we went the back way. Usually you go through Morongo and 29 Palms, but we went the other way. And I had been looking for tire tread to work with as a found object. And I saw when you first get on the Harbor Freeway, the 110 in San Pedro, I saw some blowout tires there. And I thought, how am I going to get that crossing like 4 lanes of freeway? And it just seemed so dangerous. And I just didn't get around to it. And then when we were on this highway in the desert, no traffic, and you didn't see that much tires, but we pull over and get out, and there was so much rubber or whatever. I don't even think it's rubber anymore. It's some kind of composite that they make
Yeah.
tires. So much that was just covered in dust. You
Mm.
couldn't see it, but it was
Oh.
just solid tire treads, blowouts all along that whole stretch of freeway from Palm Springs to Joshua Tree. So,
Wow,
so
the universe provided.
yeah. So I had to drag it into the back of my car and filled it up and got home and had to go through the process of cleaning it all. It wasn't a pleasant job, but I
Mm.
cleaned it and really got it kind of disinfected. And then it was really easy to work with because I just attached it to wood and just used drywall screws.
I just want to explain it's the sort of red orangey background with the
Mhm.
figure of the horse in the center of the panel, and the horse is the tire treads and the metal. It's just very striking with the orange red and the black horse.
Yeah.
And with the found objects and the tires, you created a horse.
Yeah. And that one was also pretty easy to do. It's a lot easier to paint with tires than it is with paint. You just don't have that many options in color and that kind of thing.
Oh,
It's
that's true.
about
That's true.
scale and size and line. And anyway, yeah.
Speaking of painting, though, Four Horses is another oil on canvas. I think it's beautiful. What inspired that particular piece?
Well, since I have a way of always incorporating horses into my work, that one was done quite a few years ago. That was based on the Bible description of the apocalypse and the four horsemen. I never put men or women. Well, sometimes I have put a few women on my horses, but rarely. I like my horses to be free of man's control. So I interpreted the colors of the horses based on that description in the Bible. And I can't remember exactly what they said, like a red, black, some kind of natural color.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember, but that's why I did it that way. And it happened to be one of those paintings that came together really quickly and it had real simple form and it worked. Sometimes I struggle with my paintings and I try too hard.
It's beautiful colors. Even though you've got all different colors of the horses, they sort of blend in a way from the way you put it all together. And yesterday, tomorrow collage. I keep using this word, but it's astounding, your work. What did you, there's a ton of things in there. There's a ton. I know you can't name them all, but
yeah, there is a lot in each one. I was running galleries for many years and doing art, but when I stopped doing the galleries and stopped teaching, this was the first project that I did. I collected all these cast-offs from my 20 years of teaching ceramics in the high school level. And there were just a lot of projects that never got finished or didn't meet the expectations of the student and they just left them. They took home their share, but there were a lot of things that were left on the bisqueware table that never got glazed. So at the end of every school year, I would get the truck and put in all the stuff that would have gone into the dumpster to a wall that went around my house, this crazy wall of these broken ceramics. So when I retired from everything and had the time, I pulled everything out of the walls and, well, I did various things, but then it turned into building these sculptures that are pieced together with pieces that actually nest together. They're not just thrown together with glue or anything. They're cemented together and they had to fit. So it's kind of like this puzzle project. It took a really long time. And they're built in pieces that string onto a steel armature so that they can be moved without having to get a forklift to pick them up. Because they're big, like the biggest one is about, I don't know, almost 6 feet.
Oh my goodness. You work in many different forms. And you said that horses have been a part of every show that you've had, and sometimes it's horses plus other things, like your mixed media, abstraction, and collage. But in what ways does it help you to get away from this so-called obsession of horses?
Well, just like anything that you do too much, whether you like it or not, I love horses. It just seems like I can't stop incorporating them or working with their form in my artwork. But just like anything that you do too much, you have to get away from it. And I want to explore abstraction and non-objective art back and forth because it allows you to work with just the components of art, the very bare basics of shape and line, color and repetition, rather than focusing on depicting an object, depicting something, just letting anything develop and looking at color, balance too, and movement, and without trying to draw something into it. And so then when I do go back to putting in subject matter, I'm more aware of the whole format, all the space.
I think you connected it to nature a little bit too. You said you return and you pick up where you left off on your last gesture,
Yeah,
which is what nature has to do. It has
yeah,
to follow a certain course,
right. Yeah,
respond to everything as it's happening. It sounded like that's one of the ways that you approach your work when it's maybe also when it is horses, but when it's not, when it's other types of work other than your
yeah.
horses.
Yeah, and I think it's easier to be free responding to each mark that you make, and rather than intentionally making the next mark, you respond to the last mark that you made. And it's easier to do that in non-objective work than it is with figurative work where you think, oh, well, this belongs here. That's
Yeah.
not nature speaking. That's you trying to control it. So I guess my repetition of horses throughout all these years has been to feel so comfortable with the form that it does just come. I can just react to the last mark that I made.
That's really cool. I'm going to pivot for a moment because I want to discuss that you had also participated in the Peace Corps. Can you talk about your experiences while you served?
Yeah, I decided I wanted to do it when I was in high school. It was just like my dream. And then, of course, I had to go through college. But all I wanted to do was get out of college and go in the Peace Corps and go travel. I didn't know where I was going to go. They send you where they think you're going to be good. So actually, the first place that they told me I should go is Liberia, Africa. And I was like getting ready to go there. And then they had some kind of war. So never mind. So then I got sent to Belize, Central America, but they first sent me to Costa Rica for training in agriculture. And I had told them when I was filling out the application, and I said, what kinds of things do you do? Well, I said, well, I had horses and I garden and I like to be outside. So they gave me this job of growing gardens, helping to build rabbit hutches and chicken coops for these 3 schools that were out,
Ah,
these remote jungle villages. So Belize was colonized by Britain. So all the schools were British books and concepts. So the kids lived in the jungle, basically, in the back area you had to go over 2 rivers to get there on hand crank ferries. And I lived in this little thatch hut with no running water. There was a well and
wow.
no electricity or anything like that. Oh, and I had a motorcycle. I asked them for a horse. I said, can I have a horse for my transportation? And they showed me the horses were not in very good shape for that. So
Oh,
they gave me a motorcycle to learn how to ride. So I rode a
oh
motorcycle.
wow. Oh,
So I rode a motorcycle down this little sandy dirt road to the 3 different elementary schools. The first one that I lived in was Doublehead Cabbage was the name of the school and the village. And I would work with the kids and the teachers to get them to prepare gardens and raise chickens and rabbits for sustainability, for good health, for their diet. And when you go to one of these countries that is struggling, you realize why the environment is really harsh and they don't have the big tractors and development to pave over everything. So just about every vegetable we tried to grow got eaten by an iguana or anything that was there that was hungry.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was hard and disappointing, but the cabbage did survive. It's funny that the name of the town was Doublehead Cabbage, and that was the only kind of vegetable.
And you mentioned about the curriculum. You all were encouraging the teachers to provide the gardening into the school curriculum.
Yeah, we tried to get them to lay out a garden, planning the garden and counting the rows. And these were elementary schools that we were working with. So incorporating the math of figuring out how much water or fertilizer to give the plants. Building a chicken coop or a rabbit hutch, it takes measuring and understanding. It was
Yeah.
it was a lot to learn. I had to learn it too. I didn't know a lot, just backyard gardening.
But you mentioned also when you said earlier that the schools were British based. So all the school books were about trains and about cities that the folks in Belize didn't have. It was more about teaching them skills.
Skills. And also, of course, as an artist over there, I always wanted to incorporate art. So we made our own books and I worked with the kids to illustrate them. And so I don't know what they're doing now or I don't know what they did the day I left. They may have just gone back to the same old thing. But in the meantime, I had a great experience of learning about another culture and why they are the way they are, why they are in that situation. And they learned about a US person one-on-one, not only the teachers and the students, but the neighbors and the business people and everybody.
Connection.
Connections. And I think that's where they say the motto for the Peace Corps is always the hardest job you'll ever love. That's one. And they also say there's three things that you remember you're doing, the reason why you're there. One is to learn about their culture. Two is to teach them about your culture. That this is an order of priority. And three is to get the job done. So the job is the least important. The human relations is the most important.
That's a great experience. Can you talk about how it's carried over into your life since that time?
Yeah, when I came back from Belize, living so kind of primitively, and I left LA wanting that primitive lifestyle. So when I came back, I had 2 years of experience of living off grid, basically in a really basic lifestyle. And I went to northern Idaho, way up in the mountains, where I met a lot of other kind of displaced city people from New York and Houston, LA, living kind of a similar lifestyle. They would build their own cabin and have gardens and chickens and things like that. So I learned how to can and garden and do the things that the people pre-industrialization were doing, the farmers, like a farming lifestyle. So even though there wasn't very much to do there as far as entertainment or culture, the culture was in the lifestyle of sustainability and taking care of ourselves. So, and then living here in Portuguese Bend now, when we've had to go off grid, and it feels like with the new government and all the shutdowns of protections, it just feels like we better get ready to take care of ourselves. And we're in a place here where we have space to do it, where we can build a chicken coop and we can build our gardens so that they're protected from the squirrels and the rabbits and the peacocks, because it's hard to grow vegetables here. We have the land, but it's just so hard to grow them without them getting eaten.
Close to nature.
Yeah. So we're
Yeah.
figuring out how to do that. So it seems like the Peace Corps got me ready for the way I'm living now.
More deeper preparation of
Yeah.
this living close to the land. The connection with nature is probably the essence of your art. How does it manifest in your work?
Well, I've talked a little bit about the way I respond, just like living in nature, to be sensitive to what's going on around us. I treat a painting the same way, that it's a part of nature and I'm a part of nature. And you have to go with its rhythms and pay it respect. So always respond rather than control. I'm not saying I'm an expert at that way of doing things, but it's a practice. And it's a practice in lifestyle and the way we treat people, And the paintings are just like a human or a non-alive representation of nature. And as I think about nature, I've studied so many different religions and realized how they're all kind of the same, and kind of find my own way of understanding the world. And I look at the word God, I think of God as the equivalent of the respect for nature, reverence. And yet God has been anthropomorphized into a he. And it's also associated with religions, which have all these rules and regulations to control. So when I think about that, I think about also the Asian concept of the Tao, the Tao. If you can describe it, it's not it. So I feel like that Tao is the same as God. That's how I think of them. I don't say I don't believe in God any more than I say I don't believe in the Tao. It's just nature. It's just us, and it's everything around us. I see the equivalence.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I also want to note that much of your career has involved founding, starting, and running galleries, as you mentioned. How many years were you doing this?
I think it's been about 20 years of running these organizations on and off. I think it started in 2006 and ended in 2021, but there was some breaks in between. I had galleries in Palos Verdes, and then I went up to Rolling Hills and the shopping promenade. And I also had a gallery in LA. But the gallery that I had in San Pedro, in some cases, was the same organization, same nonprofit, but it just moved locations. But when it was in San Pedro, there was already a really strong arts community there. So it didn't take more than just meeting one artist to then meet all the artists.
It's a domino effect. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
And
a
then
lot.
there was the art walk, which brings in the people. So you get to know the whole community. And also, it didn't really matter where my gallery was. When I put out a call for art, artists will come from all over Los Angeles, Pasadena, even out in San Bernardino and Southern California, I guess.
There's a very active and responsive art community in LA, and you're part of it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the main benefit I was going to get out of running these galleries was community, but that's what I value. And as I'm stepping back from it the last few years, I realize the community is still there. I can still go out and meet all the people that I was working with before. And I really love that. It's so important that have these things in common. The art network is so special. People that value art or make art or buy art or write about art or do podcasts.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a whole community.
Well, I'm glad you're still participating in it. And this new installation sounds so exciting. It's June 6th, is
June
that?
6th, it's opening, and then it runs, I think, through the 22nd, and it's
Okay.
every weekend. So it's open, I believe, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's 3 weekends at their original Redondo Pier.
Yeah. Old Tony's was there, you said. Are
Yeah,
they
we're
still
right
open?
about, you can see old Tony's from some of the galleries that are.
Okay. I'll announce it again as well when we get closer to the day, but it's coming up. It'll be here very soon.
There's 30 artists or something like that that were invited, and they'll all be responding to a different poem. So it'll give you something to grasp onto in relationship to what they're doing.
Yeah, I like the poetry part of it. And you said it's gallery 90277/78.
Mhm.
Well, Peggy Sivert, will you please tell us where people can find you?
I have an Instagram, which is Peggy Sivert 2020, because I started it well,
Yeah.
I had it before that, but I got hacked and it got closed down. So I started it in 2020 for good luck. So,
There you go.
and I have a Peggy Joe Sivert Facebook page.
And what's your website?
Website is peggysivert.com.
It's your name.
Yeah,
All your
that's my name. Yeah, just make it simple. I don't have to remember so many things.
Well, I want to let folks know that we're going to have a link to the poem that inspired you, The Horses, by Edwin Muir. And we'll also have the link to your website. And we're also going to share a couple links to reviews of some of your artwork.
You, the community.
Yeah, it'll give
Yeah.
people a good feel for the wide variety of work that you do. We talked a lot about horses today because it's an integral part of your process and your work, but you do much more. And it's all very striking and astonishing and beautiful all at one time. So I'm really happy to have had you here today. Thank you so much, Peggy Sivert.
You're welcome. And thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.